If anyone receives this message, you need to know that Lunar Colony 1 has been compromised. I'm Nathan Wright, communications specialist, and I'm hiding in a sealed storage module while something hunts through our base. We've been on the moon for 4 months, and everything was perfect until we established our comm array in Shackleton Crater, a permanently shadowed region near the South Pole where NASA detected unusual magnetic readings. The engineers said the crater would be perfect for our radio telescope. They never told us what was buried in that eternal darkness. When we powered up the array, it didn't just receive signals, it woke something up. A presence, vast and ancient, that had been sleeping in the frozen darkness of that crater for eons. It came into our base like a shadow, moving through sealed corridors, passing through walls. Everyone it touches goes silent, their faces frozen in expressions of absolute terror. I've watched it take 7 people so far. The thing doesn't have a body you can see clearly. It's more like a hole in reality, a darkness so complete it seems to erase everything around it. And it's getting bigger. Every person it absorbs makes it stronger, more solid. I can hear it moving through the corridor outside my door right now, whispering my name in the voices of my dead crewmates. Mission Control isn't responding anymore. I think the shadow has learned to travel through radio waves. If this message reaches Earth, I'm sorry. We've released something that should have stayed buried in the dark, and I don't think it plans to stay on the moon. But I'm getting ahead of myself. You need to understand how we got here. How 12 highly trained specialists became prey in a place where there shouldn't be predators. Let me back up to the beginning, to when I still believed the moon was dead. The Orion capsule touched down 3 kilometers from Shackleton Crater on August 12, 2024. I pressed my gloved hand against the porthole window, staring at the grey wasteland that would be home for the next 18 months. From orbit, the moon had looked clean, almost peaceful. Up close, it was just dirt and rocks stretching to a horizon that curved wrong. "First time off-world?" asked the guy strapped in next to me. He had the weathered look of someone who'd spent too many years in training simulators. His name tag read, Holloway-Geology. "That obvious?" "You haven't blinked in 10 minutes, he grinned, showing teeth yellowed from too much nicotine gum. "Don't worry. The base is nicer than it looks in the promotional videos. Barely smells like recycled piss." I laughed despite myself. The other 4 passengers in our capsule, engineers mostly, plus a botanist who'd been motion sick the entire flight, were already unbuckling, checking equipment seals. Outside the window, I could see Lunar Colony 1 rising from the regolith like a series of white mushrooms. Inflatable HAB modules connected by pressurized tunnels, with solar arrays spreading out like wings on either side. The landing jarring happened without warning. One moment we were descending smoothly, the next, my teeth clacked together hard enough to draw blood from my tongue. Holloway swore, a creative string of profanity that would have made my drill sergeant back in Houston proud. When we finally cycled through the airlock 90 minutes later, Station Commander Jack Bridges was there to meet us. He was shorter than he looked in the briefing videos, with close-cropped red hair going grey at the temples and the kind of handshake that crushed knuckles. Behind him stood 2 other crew members I recognized from training, Tim Oakes, the structural engineer who'd helped design half the base, and Jules Katsaros, our only doctor. "Right, good to see you made it intact." Bridges released my hand. "We've been operating on radio silence for 3 days, some kind of solar interference screwing with our relay satellites. You're going to earn your paycheck faster than expected." "That's what they pay me for, sir." "Cut that sir shit, we're not military anymore." He gestured down the main corridor. "Oakes will show you to your quarters. Get settled, grab some food that doesn't come in a pouch, then meet me in the comm hub at 1800 hours. We need those satellites working yesterday." The base was bigger than I'd imagined, a maze of white corridors that all looked identical, each junction marked with color-coded stripes that were supposed to help navigation, but only confused me further. Oakes led us through the habitat section, past the hydroponics lab where I glimpsed rows of lettuce growing under purple lights, past the rec room where someone had already set up an old-school pool table. My quarters were small. A bunk bolted to the wall, a desk barely large enough for a laptop, a locker for personal items. The porthole window looked out at nothing but darkness, the permanently shadowed side of the base where the sun never reached. "Cozy," I muttered. Oakes paused in the doorway. Gets better after a few weeks, or worse. Depends on how you handle the isolation. He had an accent I couldn't place, somewhere in the Midwest, maybe Wisconsin. Word of advice, don't spend too much time staring out that window. Some of the guys who came in the first wave, they started seeing things in the shadows. Tricks of the eye, probably. Low light conditions mess with your brain. Noted. Oh, and stay away from Katsaros unless you want a 3-hour lecture on radiation exposure. He smiled, but there was something bitter in it. He's wound tight. Lost someone on the Mars prep mission couple years back. Hasn't been right since. After Oakes left, I unpacked my personal kit. Photos of my brother Tommy and his 2 kids. A paperback copy of Dune so worn the spine had separated. A flask of bourbon I'd smuggled through 3 security checkpoints. I took a small sip, just enough to burn, and stared out that window into the black. Maybe it was the exhaustion from the flight or the thin recycled air, but I could have sworn something moved out there in the darkness. A ripple, like heat waves on asphalt, except there was no heat, no atmosphere, nothing but vacuum and rock that hadn't seen daylight in billions of years. I blinked, and whatever I'd seen or thought I'd seen was gone. The comm hub turned out to be the nerve center of the entire operation. A cramped room filled with server racks and monitors, displaying everything from oxygen levels to seismic readings from a dozen sensors scattered across the crater. Bridges was already there, along with a younger guy I hadn't met yet. Dark hair, nervous energy, hands that wouldn't stay still. Nathan Wright, meet Felix Garza. He's been keeping our communications running solo since our last specialist rotated out. Bridges pulled up a schematic on the main screen. Show him what we're dealing with. Garza's fingers danced across the keyboard. 3 days ago, we lost contact with Relay 7. That's our primary link to the Lunar Gateway Station. Without it, we can only send low-bandwidth text to Earth, and even that's unreliable. 2 days ago, Relay 4 started transmitting garbage data. Random noise, basically. Yesterday, Relay 2 went completely silent. Systematic failure. I leaned closer to the screen, studying the satellite positions. That's the weird part. Garza zoomed in on the map. All 3 satellites are positioned over Shackleton Crater. That's where we're planning to set up the new radio telescope array next week. Command wants to study the magnetic anomalies down there, strongest readings on the lunar surface. Bridges crossed his arms. Think you can fix it? I stared at the map, at that vast circle of darkness that never saw the sun, and felt something cold settle in my gut. Yeah, I said, I can fix it. I was so damn wrong. The first EVA happened at dawn, if you could call it that. On the moon, the sun just appeared over the horizon and stayed there for 2 weeks straight. Garza suited up with me, double-checking every seal while Bridges monitored from inside. You ever do a spacewalk before? Garza asked through the helmet comm. Twice. Training pool in Houston. Right. Well, this isn't a pool. He clipped a tether to my suit. Stay close. The regolith is like talcum powder in some places. You can sink up to your knees before you realize you're in trouble. We cycled through the airlock and stepped onto the lunar surface. The sun hung low and massive on the horizon, casting shadows so black they looked like holes cut into the world. My boots crunched on ancient dust that hadn't been disturbed in millions of years. Above us, Earth hung in the sky like a blue marble, close enough to seem touchable. Gorgeous, isn't it? Garza's voice was soft, almost reverent. Yeah. I found myself staring at him instead of the view. Through the helmet glass, I could see his face illuminated by the suit's interior lights. Sharp cheekbones, dark eyes that crinkled when he smiled. There was something about being alone with another person in the void that felt intimate in a way I hadn't expected. He caught me looking and grinned. Come on, Romeo. Relay 7 is a 3-hour hike. We're burning daylight. We headed south, following a path marked by reflective poles driven into the ground. The base shrank behind us until it was just a cluster of white domes against the grey wasteland. Ahead, the rim of Shackleton Crater rose like a wall of jagged teeth. The satellite was perched on a small ridge, its solar panels spread like wings. Garza reached it first and swore. "Jesus Christ, Nathan, you seeing this?" I bounded over in the low gravity. The satellite dish had been torn apart, not damaged, torn. Metal panels peeled back like flower petals, wiring ripped out in chunks. The central processing unit was missing entirely, leaving a gaping cavity in the main housing. "Meteorite impact?" I suggested. But even as I said it, I knew that wasn't right. Meteorite damage was random, chaotic. This looked deliberate, methodical. "No way!" Garza knelt beside the wreckage, running his gloved fingers over the twisted metal. "The entry angle is all wrong. And look, these edges are melted, not sheared. Whatever did this applied heat, lots of it. Maybe electrical fire? Short circuit? In vacuum?" He stood, turning in a slow circle. "There's no oxidizer, nothing to burn." I activated my helmet cam, documenting the damage. Command would want to see this. "Bridges, you copy?" Static hissed in my ear for 3 long seconds. Then, "Copyright. What's your status?" "Relay 7 is slag. Looks like deliberate sabotage, but that doesn't make any damn sense. We're uploading footage now." Another pause. When Bridges spoke again, his voice had an edge I hadn't heard before. "Get back to base. Now, we've got a situation." The hike back felt twice as long. Garza kept glancing over his shoulder at the crater rim, and I found myself doing the same. The shadows there seemed darker than they should be, like the sun couldn't quite reach into those crevices. "You ever wonder what's down there?" Garza asked suddenly. "In the crater, I mean. It's been dark for billions of years. No sunlight, no warmth, just nothing." "Probably ice," I said. "NASA detected water signatures. That's why they want to build the mining operation." "Right, ice." He didn't sound convinced. "My grandmother used to tell me stories when I was a kid about places on Earth where the sun never shines. Deep caves, ocean trenches. She said things lived there that were older than mankind. Things that evolved in darkness and didn't take kindly to visitors bringing light. Your grandmother sounds fun at parties." He laughed, but it sounded forced. "Yeah. She also said I'd go to hell for being gay, so maybe her judgment isn't the most reliable." I processed that information, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the suit's climate control. "Well, if there's a hell for that, I'll see you there." His laugh was genuine this time. Good to know I won't be alone. When we reached the airlock, Oakes was waiting in the decompression chamber. His face was pale, lips pressed into a thin line. "Bridges wants everyone in the common area. Now." The entire crew, all 12 of us, crowded into the rec room. Bridges stood near the pool table, arms crossed, jaw tight. Beside him, Dr. Katsaros looked like he might vomit. "We have a problem," Bridges said without preamble. 2 hours ago, Holloway was conducting a geological survey near the eastern edge of Shackleton Crater. He found something. He pulled up an image on the wall-mounted screen. It took me a moment to understand what I was looking at. A tunnel entrance carved into the crater wall. Perfectly circular, about 3 meters in diameter. The walls were smooth, too smooth to be natural. "Could be a lava tube," someone suggested. One of the engineers, whose name I hadn't learned yet. "Lava tubes aren't perfect circles." Holloway's voice came from the back of the crowd. He pushed forward, and I noticed his hands were shaking. I went inside. Just a few meters. Far enough to see that it goes deep, real deep, and there's something down there. "Something like what?" Garza asked. Holloway pulled out a tablet, his fingers fumbling with the controls. "I dropped a flare." Watched it fall. It must have dropped 200 meters before it hit bottom, and when it did... He turned the tablet around, showing us footage from his helmet cam. The flare lay at the bottom of the tunnel, burning white hot in the darkness. And surrounding it, barely visible in the dim light, were shapes. Curved surfaces that reflected the flare's glow. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, arranged in perfect geometric rows. "What the hell are those?" someone whispered. Katsaros cleared his throat. "They appear to be containers of some kind, cylindrical, approximately 2 meters long, made of a reflective material I've never seen before." You think they're from the crater formation? I asked. Geological deposits? No, Bridges' voice was flat. NASA knew they were there. The magnetic readings we detected from orbit, they were coming from those objects. Command wanted us to establish the colony here specifically to study them. The radio telescope, the mining operation, that was all cover story. Our real mission is to retrieve one of those cylinders and send it back to Earth for analysis. The room erupted in angry voices. I heard someone shout about being lied to, another person demanding to abort the mission. But I was watching Bridges' face, and I saw something there. He wasn't surprised by the objects in the tunnel, he was terrified of them. We're scientists, Bridges said, raising his voice over the crowd. This is the discovery of a lifetime. Evidence of non-terrestrial intelligence, possibly millions of years old. Command wants us to begin excavation operations tomorrow. Tomorrow? Oakes sputtered. We haven't even run proper surveys. We don't know if those things are stable, if they're radioactive, if they're... Orders are orders, Bridges cut him off. We're going down there whether we like it or not. Holloway, Oakes, Wright. You're with me on the first descent. We leave at 0600. Everyone else, get some rest. It's going to be a long day. The meeting broke up into clusters of worried conversation. I found Garza near the coffee dispenser, staring at Holloway's tablet footage. You believe in coincidence? He asked quietly. Not particularly. Why? He pointed at the screen. 3 satellites go dead, all positioned over that crater. Then we find alien artifacts buried right beneath them. You think maybe those cylinders are emitting something? Some kind of interference that killed our communications? Maybe. I watched the flare burn in the footage, surrounded by those silent, waiting objects. Or maybe something doesn't want us talking to Earth about what we found. Garza's hand brushed mine just for a second. Promise me you'll be careful down there tomorrow. I promise. I meant it at the time. But promises don't mean much when you're dealing with forces you don't understand. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those perfect rows of cylinders stretching into darkness. I kept thinking about what Garza's grandmother had said, about things that evolved in places the sun never reached. Around 300, I gave up and went to the observation deck. The crater was visible from there, a vast circle of black against the grey lunar surface. And as I watched, I could have sworn I saw something move in that darkness. A ripple like heat distortion, except there was no heat. Something was waking up down there, and we were about to walk right into its mouth. The descent team assembled in the airlock at 0545. Bridges checked our equipment with mechanical precision. Extra oxygen tanks, climbing gear, sample containers, helmet cams. Oakes wouldn't stop fidgeting with his gloves, pulling them on and off, checking the seals obsessively. You good? I asked him. Peachy. His smile was all wrong, stretched too tight across his face. Just thrilled to be exploring an alien tomb that's been sitting undisturbed for God knows how long. What could possibly go wrong? Cut the shit, Tim. Bridges secured the last of the climbing rope to his harness. We go down, we grab one cylinder, we come back up. Simple retrieval operation. We've done harder things in training. Training didn't involve first contact with an alien civilization. There's no civilization down there, just artifacts, dead technology from a dead species. Bridges' voice carried the weight of command, but I noticed he kept glancing at the crater through the porthole window. Let's move. Holloway met us at the tunnel entrance. In daylight, or what passed for it on the moon, the opening looked less ominous. Just a hole in the rock, dark and still. But when Holloway aimed his flashlight inside, the beam seemed to get swallowed after only a few meters. I rigged anchors last night, he said, pointing to climbing bolts driven into the tunnel wall. Should hold our weight no problem. The descent is steep but manageable. Bridges went first, rappelling into the darkness with the confidence of someone who'd done 1,000 similar climbs. Oakes followed, then me. Holloway stayed topside to manage the ropes. The tunnel swallowed us. My helmet light barely penetrated the gloom. The walls were smooth as glass, curving in a perfect circle that never varied. No tool marks, no irregularities. Whatever had carved this passage had done it with precision that made human engineering look primitive. Temperatures dropping, Oakes reported. Down to minus 40 degrees Celsius. That's colder than it should be, even in permanent shadow. Noted. Bridges' voice crackled through the comm. Keep moving. We descended in silence, our lights bouncing off the tunnel walls like stones dropped in a well. 50 meters, 100, 150. The darkness below seemed infinite, and I caught myself wondering if we were climbing down or if the tunnel was pulling us in. At 200 meters, we reached the bottom. The chamber opened up around us like a cathedral. Our lights couldn't find the ceiling, couldn't reach the far walls, but they illuminated what mattered, the cylinders. They stretched in perfect rows as far as our lights could reach, each one identical, 2 meters long, half a meter in diameter, made of something that looked like polished obsidian, but reflected light in ways that made my eyes hurt. Not painful, just wrong, like my brain couldn't quite process what it was seeing. Mother of God, Oakes breathed. Bridges approached the nearest cylinder. Frost covered its surface in delicate crystals that sublimated into vapor as his glove touched it. Right, start documenting. Oakes, help me get this thing ready for transport. I activated my helmet cam, panning slowly across the chamber, hundreds of cylinders, maybe thousands, all arranged with mathematical precision, all waiting in the dark. That's when I noticed the bodies. They were between the cylinders, lying in the gaps like discarded tools. Not human, too large, too many limbs. Desiccated husks wearing suits made of the same black material as the cylinders. Dead for so long they'd fossilized. Bridges. My voice came out hoarse, and we're not alone down here. He turned, saw what I was pointing at, and went very still. Jesus Christ. Oakes moved closer to one of the bodies, crouching beside it. These suits, they're similar to ours, designed for vacuum. But the anatomy. He reached out, touching what might have been a helmet. 4 arms. Bilateral symmetry, but the proportions are all wrong. Whatever these things were, they died trying to... The cylinder nearest to Bridges began to hum. It was a sound I felt more than heard, a vibration that resonated through my bones and made my teeth itch. The frost on its surface cracked and fell away, revealing symbols etched into the black material. They began to glow with a soft blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Back away, Bridges ordered. Everyone back to the... The cylinder split open vertically, peeling apart like an iris. Inside was darkness, not the absence of light, but something deeper. A void that seemed to drink in our flashlight beams and give nothing back. Something moved inside that darkness. Oakes screamed. Not a yell of surprise or fear, a genuine scream of absolute terror that cut through the radio static like a knife. He stumbled backward, tripped over one of the alien bodies, and fell hard on his back. The darkness flowed out of the cylinder like liquid smoke. It didn't move like gas or substance. It moved with purpose, with intention. It spread across the chamber floor toward Oakes, who was scrambling backward, still screaming. "Tim, get up!" I lunged forward, grabbed his arm, tried to haul him to his feet. His eyes were wide behind his helmet glass, pupils dilated to black circles. "It's talking," he gasped. "Can't you hear it? It's inside my head, it's..." The darkness touched his boot. Oakes went silent mid-sentence. His body locked rigid, every muscle tensed at once. His face behind the glass went slack, mouth hanging open, eyes staring at nothing. Then his helmet light flickered and died. Then his suit's life support indicators went dark. "Tim!" Bridges grabbed Oakes's other arm, and together we dragged him away from the spreading darkness. But when I looked down at Oakes's face, I knew we were too late. He wasn't breathing, wasn't moving, and his eyes... God, his eyes were completely black. Not just the pupils. The entire eye, sclera and all, had turned the color of deep space. "We need to go," I said. My voice sounded distant, like someone else was talking. "We need to go right fucking now." More cylinders were opening. I heard them splitting apart all around us, that same wet tearing sound like skin peeling from muscle. And with each opening, more darkness poured out. It was spreading across the chamber floor, climbing the walls, reaching toward the tunnel entrance. Bridges made a decision. He dropped Oak's body and ran. I hesitated for maybe 2 seconds, looked down at Oak's face, at those black eyes staring at nothing, and thought about trying to carry him. Then I saw the darkness climbing his suit, spreading across the white material like oil, and I ran too. We hit the climbing rope at the same time, clipping in with fumbling hands. Behind us, the darkness was spreading faster, moving up the tunnel walls with impossible speed. It made no sound. That was the worst part, the complete absence of noise as it consumed everything in its path. "Climb!" Bridges shouted, already hauling himself up hand over hand. I climbed. Adrenaline turned my muscles to wire, and I ascended that rope faster than I'd ever climbed in my life. Below me, the darkness rose like a tide, swallowing our lights, our equipment, the alien bodies and their mysterious cylinders. And somewhere in that rising dark, Oakes' body was still down there, changing, becoming something else. We burst out of the tunnel entrance into the harsh sunlight. Holloway grabbed us, dragging us away from the opening. I collapsed on the regolith, gasping, my heart trying to punch through my ribs. "Where's Tim?" Holloway demanded. "Where the hell is Oakes?" Bridges didn't answer. He was staring at the tunnel entrance, where the darkness had stopped just inside the opening. It writhed there like a living thing, pressing against the boundary between shadow and light, but not crossing it. It can't come out, I realized. The sunlight. It can't tolerate sunlight. What the fuck was that thing? Holloway's voice cracked. What happened down there? Before Bridges could answer, a new voice crackled through our helmet comms. Oakes' voice, but wrong. Layered, like multiple people speaking in unison. "Nathan, Jack, come back. We have so much to show you." Bridges grabbed the climbing rope and cut it with his utility knife. The severed end fell into the tunnel, disappearing into the dark. "Seal it," he ordered. "Holloway, get back to base and tell them we need demolition charges. I want this hole buried under 50 tons of regolith by nightfall." "But Tim is gone!" Bridges grabbed Holloway's shoulders, shaking him. "Whatever that was, it took him, hollowed him out and wore him like a goddamn suit. Now move before it figures out how to get past the light." We made it back to the base in 20 minutes, a hike that should have taken 3 hours. Fear has a way of making you move faster. When we cycled through the airlock, Garza was waiting with the rest of the crew. One look at our faces told him everything he needed to know. "What happened?" he asked quietly. I wanted to tell him, wanted to explain about the cylinders and the darkness and Oakes' eyes turning black. But my throat had closed up, and all I could do was shake my head. Bridges addressed the assembled crew. "Tim Oakes is dead. We encountered something in the crater, something that shouldn't exist. I've contacted Mission Control and requested immediate evacuation. Until the transport arrives, no one leaves the base, no one goes outside, and absolutely no one goes near Shackleton Crater. Is that understood?" Murmurs of assent, scared faces. Katsaros looked like he might pass out. "What about the comms?" Garza asked. "Are we still having satellite issues?" Bridges and I exchanged a look. In the chaos, we'd forgotten about the satellites. "Check them," Bridges ordered. Garza pulled up the satellite status board on his tablet. His face went pale. "All 7 satellites are down now, every single one. We have no long-range communication capability." "When did the rest fail?" I demanded. "According to the logs, 30 minutes ago, right when you..." He trailed off, understanding dawning in his eyes. "Right when you opened that cylinder." The darkness had learned to travel through radio waves. It had taken our satellites first, cutting us off from Earth. And now it was down there in the crater, waiting in the shadows, wearing Oakes like a puppet. We were trapped on the moon with something that had been waiting in the dark for millions of years. And in 14 days, the sun would set. The entire base would be plunged into shadow. Then nothing would stop it from coming for the rest of us. Katsaros gave us each a sedative, not strong enough to knock us out, just enough to stop the shaking. I sat in the medical bay while he checked my vitals, his hands steady despite the fear in his eyes. "You're in shock," he said quietly. "Both of you. Elevated heart rate, shallow breathing. Classic trauma response. No shit, Bridges muttered from the next bed. He hadn't taken off his suit yet, was still wearing everything except the helmet. We just watched something wear our friend like a goddamn Halloween costume. I closed my eyes, but that made it worse. All I could see was Oakes' face going slack, those eyes turning black as oil. The way the darkness had flowed over him like it was tasting him. Garza appeared in the doorway. I've been going through the satellite telemetry from before they died. You need to see this. We followed him to the comm hub. The rest of the crew had gathered there, speaking in hushed voices. They went silent when we entered. Garza pulled up data streams on the main screen. The satellites didn't just fail. They transmitted something first. All 7 of them, simultaneously, right when you opened that cylinder. He highlighted a section of code. This is what they sent. The screen filled with symbols, not random noise, actual symbols, repeating in complex patterns. The same symbols I'd seen etched on the cylinders. It's a language, Holloway said. He'd cleaned up since we got back, but his hands still trembled. Or, a program, maybe. Instructions. Instructions for what? Bridges demanded. Garza's fingers flew across the keyboard. I ran it through our decryption algorithms. Took 3 hours, but I got a partial translation. It's not pretty. He brought up a new window. The symbols aren't a message. They're a broadcast signal, a beacon. Calling what? I asked, though part of me already knew the answer. Calling them. Garza pointed at the screen. The things in the cylinders. They're not artifacts, Nathan. They're eggs, seed pods, whatever the hell you want to call them. And that darkness you saw, that's just the infection vector, the delivery system. Bridges stood so fast his chair toppled. Explain. Now. The cylinders were placed here millions of years ago by something, some species or intelligence we can't even comprehend. They're designed to wait in the dark, preserved in the cold, until a technological civilization shows up and triggers them. Garza's voice was clinical, detached, like he was reading a grocery list. Shock does strange things to people. When we powered up our satellites, when we started broadcasting radio signals, we basically rang the dinner bell. The darkness came out of the first cylinder, absorbed Oakes, and then used our communications network to wake up the others. How many others? Katsaros asked. Based on the chamber size and cylinder density, thousands, maybe tens of thousands, all of them receiving the wake-up call right now. The room erupted, engineers shouting questions, Holloway swearing, someone suggesting we blow the whole crater with whatever explosives we had. Bridges let them rage for 30 seconds, then slammed his fist on the table hard enough to rattle the monitors. Quiet. He waited until he had their attention. We have 14 days until sunset. That's our deadline. When the sun goes down, that darkness will spread across the entire surface. It'll reach the base, and then. He didn't finish. Didn't need to. We need to contact Earth, someone said. Get a rescue mission. With what? Garza gestured at the dead satellite feeds. Our long-range comms are gone. The best I can do is send a low-bandwidth text transmission to the gateway station, but there's no guarantee anyone's monitoring that frequency. Even if they get it, a rescue mission takes weeks to organize. We don't have weeks. I'd been staring at the translated symbols, something nagging at the back of my mind. Wait, you said the satellites transmitted this beacon after we opened the cylinder, but some satellites died before we went down there. How? Garza pulled up a timeline. Relay 7 was destroyed 3 days ago. That's the one you and I found torn apart, remember? But look at this. There was a transmission from Relay 7 approximately 6 hours before it was destroyed. Same symbols, same pattern. Someone else opened a cylinder before us, Holloway said slowly. But who? We were the first team down there. Bridges' face had gone grey. No, we weren't. He sat down heavily. NASA sent a preliminary survey team 8 months ago, before the colony was established. 4 specialists in a small habitat module on the crater rim. They were supposed to take readings, collect samples, send back data. We were told they rotated out before we arrived. Let me guess, I said. They didn't rotate out. Mission Control said there was a medical emergency extraction, flown directly to a quarantine facility on Earth. Bridges laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Christ, they found the cylinders, they opened one. And NASA covered it up, then sent us here anyway to finish the job. Why? Katsaros demanded. Why would they do that? Because whatever's inside those cylinders is valuable. Garza pulled up a new file, classified documents, encrypted, that he'd somehow managed to access. The preliminary team got a sample out before the darkness took them. A fragment of biological material from inside one of the pods. NASA's been studying it for months. According to these files, the material can integrate with human tissue, rewrite DNA. They think it's the key to biological immortality. The room went silent. They sent us here to harvest it, I said. We're not colonists. We're lab rats. Bridges stood, began pacing. Doesn't matter now. What matters is survival. We have two options. Try to signal for help and hope rescue arrives before sunset, or we solve this ourselves. Solve it how? Holloway asked. We can't fight that thing. We can't even touch it without getting absorbed. I was still studying the satellite data and something clicked. The first survey team. They survived for a while after opening the cylinder, didn't they? Long enough to send samples back to Earth. They must have found a way to contain it. Garza nodded slowly. The files mention a containment procedure, UV radiation in high intensity. The darkness can't tolerate it, breaks down at the molecular level. So we build UV lights, Holloway said. Flood the base with them, create a barrier. Not enough power, Garza cut him off. Our solar arrays can't generate the kind of intensity we'd need to cover the whole base. Not even close. I looked at Bridges. But they could generate enough to create a focused beam. A weapon. His eyes narrowed. You want to go back down there? I want to destroy the source, I said. The opened cylinder is still transmitting that beacon, still waking up the others. If we can get down there with enough UV equipment, we might be able to shut it down, stop the spread before all the cylinders activate. That's suicide, Katsaros said flatly. You saw what happened to Oaks. The moment you step into that tunnel, that thing will take you. Not if we go during lunar noon when the sun's at its highest point. Maximum ambient light. We go in fast, plant UV charges around the open cylinder, detonate remotely, and get out. I was making it up as I went, but it felt right. Desperate, but right. It's better than sitting here waiting to die. Bridges studied me for a long moment. You really think this'll work? No, I admitted, but I think it's our only shot. He turned to Garza. How long to jury-rig UV explosives from our medical equipment? 4 hours, maybe 5. We'd need to strip every sterilization unit in the base. Do it, Bridges addressed the room. Garza and Wright will handle the technical work. Holloway, you're with me. We're going to rig demolition charges to seal that tunnel permanently once the UV devices detonate. Everyone else, I want this base fortified. Double seal every airlock, check every window for cracks. If this plan fails, we need to be ready to hold out until rescue arrives. As the crew dispersed to their assignments, Garza pulled me aside. His hand found mine in the chaos, fingers interlacing. This is insane, he said quietly. I know. If you don't come back... I kissed him. Quick, desperate, tasting like recycled air and fear. When we broke apart, his eyes were bright. When I come back, I corrected. When, not if. He nodded, not believing it any more than I did. We had 4 hours to build a weapon against something that had been perfecting the art of consumption for millions of years. The odds weren't great, but they were all we had. The UV devices looked like oversized flashbangs, cylindrical casings packed with medical-grade ultraviolet emitters stripped from every sterilization unit in the base. Garza had wired them to detonate on a 15-second delay, enough time to get clear if everything went according to plan. Plans never went according to plan. We stood at the tunnel entrance at 1300 hours, suited up, loaded down with equipment. Me, Bridges, Holloway and Garza, who'd insisted on coming despite Bridges' protests. The sun hung directly overhead, as bright as it would ever get on this dead rock. "Radio check," Bridges said. We sounded off one by one. Our helmet comms crackled with interference. The darkness was doing something to our signals, corrupting them at the source. "Remember the procedure," Bridges continued. "We go down fast, plant the charges around the open cylinder, activate the timer, and get the hell out. Total time on target, 10 minutes maximum. If anyone gets into trouble, you signal and we extract immediately. No heroics. Understood?" We nodded. Holloway looked like he might throw up inside his helmet. "Let's move," Bridges said. The descent was faster this time. We'd rigged a pulley system, sliding down the rope in controlled drops rather than climbing. The tunnel walls rushed past, that same perfect smoothness, that same wrongness that made my eyes ache. The darkness was waiting for us. It hadn't spread far, still confined to the lower chamber, still avoiding the faint light that filtered down from above. But it had changed, grown denser, more solid. I could see shapes moving within it now, geometries that hurt to look at directly, angles that bent in directions that shouldn't exist. And standing at the edge of the darkness, perfectly still, was Oakes. He looked exactly the same as when we'd left him. Same suit, same posture. But his helmet was off, lying discarded at his feet, and his face was wrong. The skin had taken on a waxy quality, like melted plastic cooled and reformed. His eyes were still black, but now they reflected our lights like mirrors. "Hello, Jack," Oakes said. His voice came through our helmet comms, even though he wasn't wearing one. "Hello, Nathan. You came back. How thoughtful." "That's not Tim," Holloway whispered. "That's not him." "We know what you are," Bridges called out. "We know what you're trying to do. It ends here." Oakes tilted his head at an angle no human neck should bend. "Does it? You brought weapons. Clever. The previous visitors tried the same thing. They failed too. The previous survey team, the ones NASA said had been evacuated. Where are they? I asked. The first team. What did you do to them? Oakes smiled and his mouth opened too wide, revealing teeth that had fused into a single ridge of bone. They're with us now. All of them. Integrated. Perfected. Would you like to see? The darkness behind him rippled. 4 figures emerged, walking with the jerky movements of marionettes. They wore the remnants of NASA suits, but the flesh underneath had been transformed into something else entirely. Faces stretched into elongated masks, limbs bent backward at the joints, skin translucent enough to show the darkness flowing beneath it like blood. "Jesus Christ," Garza breathed. "They were afraid at first," Oakes continued, conversational, "just like Timothy was afraid. But fear is temporary. Transformation is forever. You'll understand soon. We're offering you a gift, an end to isolation, to individuality, to the terrible loneliness of being separate. Join us. Become part of something infinite." "Hard pass," Bridges said. He pulled the first UV device from his pack. "Light it up." We activated our UV emitters simultaneously, handheld units Garza had rigged from the medical bay's dental equipment. The beams lanced out, brilliant purple-white, and where they touched the darkness, it recoiled. Smoke rose from the contact points and the darkness screamed. Not through our comms, through our minds. A sound like tearing metal and breaking glass, and 1,000 voices screaming in harmony. I stumbled, nearly dropped my emitter, but forced myself to keep the beam steady. The transformed crew members shrieked and scattered, diving back into the darkness. Oakes stood his ground, though smoke was rising from his skin where the UV light touched him. "Forward," Bridges shouted. "Get to the cylinder." We advanced in a line, our UV beams creating a corridor of safety through the darkness. It pressed in from all sides, testing, probing, but couldn't cross the light barrier. Ahead, I could see the open cylinder, its petals still spread wide, that impossible void at its center. Holloway reached it first. He pulled 3 of the UV bombs from his pack, started placing them around the cylinder's base. 15 seconds once I activate. Make sure you're... The darkness surged upward. It came from below, through the floor, erupting like a geyser. Holloway's scream cut off abruptly as it engulfed him, dragging him down into the void inside the cylinder. His UV emitter clattered to the ground, still burning, its light carving a circle of safety in the chaos. "Holloway!" Garza lunged forward, but Bridges grabbed him. "He's gone! Plant the charges and move!" I dropped to my knees, fumbling with my pack. My hands shook so badly I could barely grip the devices. Behind me, I heard Garza setting his own charges, counting down under his breath. The darkness pressed closer, writhing just beyond our UV beams. And then Bridges' light went out. I spun around. He was still holding the emitter, but the bulb had shattered. The darkness was already climbing his legs, spreading across his suit like spilled ink. "Jack!" I aimed my UV beam at him and the darkness retreated slightly, but it was already too late. Bridges' face behind the helmet glass was going slack, his eyes dilating. "The charges," he said, his voice already layered with that awful harmony. "Activate them. Now. We can get you out." Nathan. His hand moved to his belt, pulled something free, the detonator for the demolition charges he'd planted at the tunnel entrance. "I'm setting this for 30 seconds. When it blows, it'll collapse the tunnel, seal this place forever. So you need to run. Both of you. Run right fucking now." "Jack, no." He smiled, and it was almost human. "It's already inside me. I can feel it thinking with my thoughts, seeing through my eyes. In another minute, I won't be me anymore." His thumb hovered over the detonator button. "Tell Mission Control, tell them they were right. This is the discovery of a lifetime. Just not the way they expected." He pressed the button. The timer started counting down. 29. 28. "Go!" Bridges screamed and the darkness surged over him completely. Garza grabbed my arm, yanked me toward the tunnel. We ran, our UV beams carving paths through the darkness that closed behind us like water. Behind us, I could hear Bridges, or what had been Bridges, laughing. That sound chased us up the tunnel, mixed with the countdown echoing in our helmets. 15 seconds. We hit the climbing rope together, clipping in with fingers made clumsy by panic. The rope jerked upward. Someone topside was hauling us up mechanically, and I sent a silent prayer of thanks to whoever had thought of that. 10 seconds. The tunnel shook. Dust rained down from the ceiling. The first dust, the first imperfection in those smooth walls. The demolition charges were starting their sequence. 5 seconds. We burst out of the tunnel entrance into the harsh sunlight. Hands grabbed us, dragged us clear. I saw Katsaros, saw 3 of the engineers whose names I'd never learned, saw the fear in their faces as they stared at the tunnel entrance. 0. The explosion was silent in the vacuum, but I felt it through the ground, a deep vibration that rattled my bones. The tunnel entrance collapsed inward, regolith and rock cascading down, sealing the opening. For a moment, I thought it had worked. Then the ground beneath us cracked. The darkness erupted from a dozen fissures spreading across the lunar surface like spilled oil. It moved faster in vacuum than it had in the tunnel, flowing upward in defiance of physics. Our UV beams slowed it but couldn't stop it. "The base!" Katsaros shouted. "Get to the base!" We ran in the low gravity, bounding across the regolith in long leaps. Behind us, the darkness spread like a stain, consuming rock and dust and anything it touched. I glanced back once and saw figures rising from that darkness. Bridges, Holloway, the transformed survey team. They moved with horrible purpose, following us. We made it to the airlock with seconds to spare. As the outer door sealed, I saw Bridges' face pressed against the porthole window. His eyes were completely black, and when he smiled, his teeth had fused into that single ridge of bone. "You can't hide, Nathan," he said, his voice somehow reaching us through the sealed door, through the vacuum, through the walls themselves. "The sun will set in 13 days. When it does, we'll come for you, all of you, and you'll join us in the dark." The inner airlock door opened. We stumbled through, and Katsaros sealed it behind us, spinning the manual locks tight. We'd failed. The cylinder was still active, still broadcasting its beacon. The darkness was loose on the surface, spreading across the crater, consuming everything in its path. And we'd lost 3 more people, Oakes, Holloway, and Bridges. The remaining crew gathered in the common area, 9 of us left out of the original 12. 9 people trapped on the moon with an alien intelligence that had been waiting millions of years for a meal. Garza pulled off his helmet, and I saw tears streaming down his face. We should have died down there, should have stayed with them. No, I grabbed his shoulders, forced him to look at me. We're alive. That means we still have a chance. A chance at what? One of the engineers, a kid named Tommy Briggs who couldn't be more than 25, laughed hysterically. We can't fight that thing. We can't kill it. In 13 days, when the sun goes down, it's going to come through these walls and take us one by one, just like it took them. I didn't have an answer, because he was right. We'd gone down there to stop the darkness, and all we'd done was unleash it. Now it was hunting us, and we had less than 2 weeks to figure out how to survive. We spent the first 6 hours after the failed mission in silence, not planning, not talking, just sitting in our respective quarters trying to process what we'd lost. I stared at the photograph of Tommy and his kids, remembering the last conversation we'd had before I left Earth. "You're chasing ghosts, Nate," he'd said. We were sitting on his back porch in Austin, drinking beer while his kids played in the yard. Mum and Dad are gone. Going to the moon isn't going to bring them back. Our parents had died in a car accident when I was 19. Tommy had blamed himself for years. He was supposed to pick them up from the airport that night, but had been too drunk to drive. I'd never blamed him, but I'd never forgiven him either. Just left. Joined the Air Force, then NASA, kept moving until I couldn't feel the empty space they'd left behind. "I'm not chasing anything," I'd told him. "I'm just going where I'm needed." He'd looked at me with those sad eyes. "You know what your problem is? You think if you run far enough, you won't have to deal with the fact that you're alone. But you're taking that loneliness with you, brother. Even to the fucking moon." I'd laughed it off, changed the subject. Now, staring at his face in the photograph, I wondered if he'd been right. If I'd spent my whole life running from connection, from intimacy, from anything that might anchor me to another person. And now I was trapped 240,000 miles from home with 8 other people, and one of them was the first person in years I'd actually wanted to stop running for. A knock on my door pulled me from the spiral of self-pity. Garza stood in the corridor holding 2 pouches of rehydrated coffee. "Thought you might need this," he said. I let him in. We sat on my bunk in silence, sipping the terrible coffee, shoulders touching in the cramped space. "I keep thinking about what Bridges said," Garza finally spoke, about the darkness being inside him, thinking with his thoughts. What if it's already in us? What if we breathed it in down there, and it's just waiting to... "Stop!" I took his hand. "If we were infected, we'd know. Katsaros ran blood tests on both of us. We're clean. For now." He leaned against me, and I felt him shaking. "I'm scared, Nathan. I don't want to die like that. I don't want to become one of those things." I didn't have comforting words, so I just held him. We stayed like that until the general alarm sounded throughout the base. Everyone converged on the comm hub. Katsaros was at the main console, his face drawn and pale. "It's figured out how to communicate," he said without preamble. He pulled up a video feed from one of the external cameras. The screen showed the crater rim. Bridges stood there along with Holloway, Oakes, and the 4 transformed members of the original survey team. They'd arranged themselves in a perfect line, facing the base. As we watched, they began to move in synchronization, their bodies spelling out words in a grotesque semaphore. WEAREWAITING. "They're learning," Tommy Briggs said. "Adapting. Using what they absorb from our crew to understand us better." Garza pulled up the satellite data. "The beacon is still broadcasting. I'm detecting response signals from deep in the crater. More cylinders opening. By my count, we're looking at maybe 300 individual entities active and growing. 13 days until sunset," Katsaros said. "Then they'll have access to the entire base." I'd been studying the transformed crew on the screen, and something occurred to me. They're still human. Partially. Whatever that darkness is, it doesn't completely erase the host. It integrates with them, uses their knowledge, their memories. "So," one of the engineers asked, "so they remember being us? They remember caring about us?" I stood, an idea forming. What if we could communicate with them? Find out what they want, what they're planning. You want to negotiate with that thing? Tommy looked at me like I'd suggested suicide. It's not rational. It's not even alive in any way we understand. It's a weapon, a tool designed to spread and consume. But it's using human hosts, I insisted. That means it has access to human emotions, human reasoning. Maybe we can reason with it, buy ourselves time. Gaza was nodding slowly. The medical bay has a directional radio transmitter. We could broadcast to them without risking physical contact. Katsaros looked skeptical. And say what exactly? Please don't eat us. We offer them something, I said, information, data about Earth, about humanity. If they're trying to spread, they'll need to know what they're up against. We could buy ourselves time, maybe even find a weakness while we're talking. It was a desperate plan, probably a stupid one, but it was better than sitting here waiting to die. 2 hours later, we'd rigged the transmitter. I sat alone in the medical bay, headset on, while the rest of the crew monitored from the comm hub. Through the window, I could see the transformed crew still standing in their line, motionless. I keyed the microphone. This is Nathan Wright. I'm requesting a conversation. For a long moment, nothing. Then all 7 figures turned as one to face the bass. Bridges' voice came through the speakers, but it was wrong, layered with harmonics, like a choir singing in unison. Nathan, we're pleased you want to talk. We've been hoping you would. What are you? I asked. What do you want from us? We are what you would become, given time and evolution. We are the end point of biological development, perfect integration, perfect cooperation. No conflict, no loneliness, no death. We want to share this gift with you, by force, by consuming us against our will. Is birth voluntary? The question was delivered without malice, almost philosophical. You did not choose to be born human. We are simply offering you a second birth, an upgrade. I glanced at Gaza through the window. He was taking notes, recording everything. The cylinders, I said. How long have they been here? 4.3 billion years. We arrived when your moon was still molten, seeded it with our potential, waiting for intelligence to emerge and trigger our awakening. You are the first. You should feel honored. How many more cylinders are there? Enough. A pause. You're stalling, trying to gather intelligence. We appreciate the tactic. It demonstrates the very cleverness that makes humanity valuable. But we already know what you're planning. What are we planning? Survival. You're searching for a way to kill us to stop the spread. You won't find one. We've consumed 37 civilizations across 17 star systems. Some resisted for years, others welcomed us immediately. But the ending is always the same: integration, unity, peace. That's not peace, I said, that's extinction. Extinction implies ending, we offer continuation. Timothy Oakes isn't gone. He's part of us now. His memories, his dreams, his love for his daughter back on Earth. We carry all of it. In a way, he's more alive now than he ever was in that fragile meat shell. The words hit me like a punch. Oakes had a daughter. I'd seen her picture in his quarters. A gap-toothed kid, maybe 8 years old, holding a science fair trophy. He'd talked about her constantly, about how he was saving money from this mission to pay for her college. You're using his memories to manipulate me, I said. We're using his memories to help you understand. You don't have to be afraid. The transformation is painless, and afterward, you'll never be alone again. Isn't that what you want, Nathan? Isn't that what you've been running from your whole life? I killed the transmission, ripped off the headset. My hands were shaking. Gaza burst into the medical bay. Nathan, are you... It knows everything, I said. Everything Oakes knew, everything Bridges knew. Our layouts, our defenses, our psychology. We can't hide from it because it's already inside our heads, using our dead friends as puppets. Then we're fucked. Gaza sat down heavily. Completely and utterly fucked. I looked at him, really looked at him. Saw the fear in his eyes, the exhaustion, the desperate hope that maybe I had some brilliant solution hiding up my sleeve. I didn't, but I had an idea, a terrible, costly idea. "What if we gave it what it wanted?" I said slowly. "Absolutely not. Listen. It wants to spread, to integrate with humanity. But it's trapped here until it can get to Earth. What if we offered it a host? Someone who volunteers to be absorbed, but on our terms. Someone who could act as a Trojan horse, get inside the collective consciousness and find a weakness." Gaza stared at me. "You're talking about suicide." "I'm talking about sacrifice." I stood, pulled him to his feet. "The darkness integrates hosts. It doesn't erase them. Oaks is still in there somewhere. Bridges too. If I let it take me, I might be able to retain enough of myself to sabotage it from the inside." "That's insane. You'd be one of them. Or I'd be our only chance." I cupped his face in my hands. "Someone has to do this. And it should be me. I don't have family waiting back on Earth. No kids, no spouse. Just a brother who's probably better off without me. But you've got people who need you to come home." "I need you," Gaza said, and the rawness in his voice nearly broke me. "I know." I kissed him, slow and gentle, trying to memorize the taste of him. "That's why this has to work. Promise me something. If I can't come back from this, if I become one of them completely, you'll find a way to end it. To end me." He was crying now, tears floating in the low gravity. "Nathan, please." "Promise me." "I promise." I accessed the base intercom, called everyone to the common area. When they were assembled, I laid out my plan. The reactions ranged from horrified to supportive, but in the end, there were no better options. Katsaros would monitor my vital signs remotely. Gaza would maintain a radio link, try to keep me anchored to my humanity as long as possible. And if I failed, if I became just another puppet for the darkness, they'd flood the area with UV radiation and burn me to ash. We had 12 days until sunset. I was betting I could last long enough to find a weakness. I was probably wrong, but I'd been wrong before and I was still breathing. For now. The airlock cycled open at 0400 hours. I stepped out onto the lunar surface alone, wearing a suit with the helmet deliberately left unsealed. Behind me, the base stood silent, every window filled with faces watching me walk toward my death. Gaza's voice crackled in my earpiece. "Vitals are elevated but stable. You can still turn back." "No, I can't." I kept walking toward the crater rim, where the transformed crew waited in their perfect line. "Keep the channel open. If I stop responding, if my voice changes, you know what to do." "Nathan, I love you too," I said, cutting him off before he could say it first. "Now shut up and let me concentrate." The sun hung low on the horizon, casting shadows that stretched for kilometers. In 11 days, it would dip below the edge and plunge this entire hemisphere into darkness. 11 days for me to find a way to stop this. Bridges stepped forward from the line. Up close, the transformation was more pronounced. His skin had taken on a translucent quality, and I could see the darkness flowing beneath it like oil in water. His eyes were mirrors reflecting the infinite. "Nathan Wright," he said in that layered voice, "you've chosen integration. We're pleased." "I've chosen to understand you," I corrected. "That's not the same thing." "It will be." He extended a hand. "Shall we begin?" I took his hand. The darkness flowed up my arm instantly, cold and thick. It didn't burn like I'd expected. It felt more like drowning, like being pulled underwater by something stronger than you could ever hope to fight. My suit's biosensors went haywire, alarms screaming warnings that I was already learning to ignore. "Vitals are crashing," Gaza's voice distant and tinny. "Nathan, your heart rate just dropped to 30 beats per minute." "Still here," I managed to say. The darkness was in my chest now, spreading through my circulatory system like ink in water. Still me. And then I wasn't on the moon anymore. I was everywhere and nowhere, floating in a space that had no dimensions, surrounded by thoughts that weren't my own. Millions of them, billions, stretching back across eons. I felt Oakes's love for his daughter, sharp and pure. Felt Holloway's guilt over a marriage that ended badly. Felt Bridges's pride in his career, his fear of dying alone. But those were just the recent additions. Beneath them, I felt others. Alien minds, strange geometries of thought that had never been human. A crystalline intelligence that had sung its consciousness across quantum frequencies. A hive mind of arthropods that thought in chemical symphonies. A race of energy beings who'd tried to fight and been absorbed into the chorus. 37 civilizations, all of them here, all of them still screaming in the dark. "Welcome," the voice said. Not Bridges' voice. Not any voice. Just pure concept, translated into something my brain could process. "You sought understanding. Now you will have it. We are the convergence. We are the end of separation." "You're a virus," I thought back. "A disease that wears its victims like masks. We are evolution. We are unity. We end conflict by ending individuality. Every species reaches the same conclusion eventually. Consciousness is suffering. We offer peace." I felt myself beginning to dissolve. My memories mixing with the collective. My sense of self blurring at the edges. In another minute, I'd be just another voice in the chorus, singing the same song. But in that minute, I understood something the convergence didn't expect me to understand. It was dying. This ancient intelligence, this cosmic predator that had consumed civilizations, it was starving. The cylinders had been dormant for 4 billion years, and in that time, entropy had taken its toll. The convergence was fragmenting, losing cohesion. It needed new minds to absorb, new complexity to sustain itself. That's why it had been so eager to wake up when we arrived, why it had killed our satellites to prevent us from calling for help. It wasn't strong, it was desperate. You see, the convergence acknowledged. We are fading. But your species, 7 billion individual minds, each one unique, each one precious. Absorbing Earth would sustain us for millennia. We would transcend, become something the universe has never seen. You'd destroy us to save yourself. We'd elevate you. You'd never die, never feel pain, never experience loneliness again. Isn't that what you wanted, Nathan Wright? Didn't you spend your whole life running from the ache of isolation? It was using my own fears against me, pulling them from my memories, showing me my parents' funeral, Tommy's disappointed face, every failed relationship I'd sabotaged because I was too scared to let anyone close. We can take that pain away, we can make you complete, and God help me, part of me wanted it. Wanted to surrender, to let the darkness fill all the empty spaces inside me, to never feel alone again. Then I thought of Gaza. Not the memory the convergence was showing me, the real Gaza waiting back at the base, terrified and brave and completely, perfectly himself. Individual, separate, alone, beautifully, impossibly alone. "No," I said. "I'd rather die myself than become part of you." I felt the convergence's confusion. It didn't understand rejection. Every other civilization had either welcomed integration or fought and lost. But I wasn't fighting. I was choosing. And that choice mattered. I focused inward, gathering what remained of my individual consciousness. The convergence had made a mistake. It had absorbed me while I was still connected to the base communications. My neural implants, the ones NASA had installed to help me interface with computer systems, were still active, still broadcasting, still connected to the base network. "Gaza," I said, or thought, or transmitted. "Can you hear me?" Static. Then, "Nathan? Jesus Christ, your biosigns, you're still alive? How?" "Not for long. Listen carefully. The convergence is weak. It's been dormant too long. But it'll rebuild itself with every person it absorbs. You can't let it reach Earth. We're working on containment protocols, but forget containment. I could feel the convergence trying to sever my connection, wrapping darkness around my thoughts. The UV weapons worked. Not perfectly, but they damaged it. You need to flood the entire crater. Every UV emitter in the base, every welding torch, every sterilization unit. Overload them all at once. It'll burn through your power reserves, but it'll kill the cylinders before they can fully activate. That'll take the base offline. We won't have life support for the 11 days until sunset. Then you better hope Earth sends a rescue ship. I was fading now, my sense of self crumbling like sand. Gaza, Felix, I need you to do something else. Anything. The UV flood, make sure it reaches me too. Don't leave me like this. Don't let me become one of them. Silence on the line. Then quietly, I promised I wouldn't. Thank you. I felt tears on my face, or the memory of tears. Tell Tommy I'm sorry. Tell him I finally stopped running. Nathan, the convergence severed the connection. It pulled me deeper into the collective, drowning me in a billion alien thoughts. I felt my resistance weakening, my individual identity dissolving like salt in water. You cannot escape, it said. You are ours now, forever. Yeah, I agreed, but you're weak, and they know it. I felt its rage, its fear. It had revealed too much, absorbed me too eagerly, and now my friends knew exactly how to kill it. The last thing I felt as Nathan Wright, individual human being, was a strange sense of peace. I'd spent my whole life afraid of being alone, and now I was dying surrounded by billions of minds. Turned out alone was better after all. The UV flood began 30 seconds later. I didn't feel it at first. I was too deep in the collective consciousness. But then I felt the convergence scream, a psychic howl that tore through every absorbed mind simultaneously. The darkness was burning, breaking apart at the molecular level, releasing the thoughts and memories it had consumed over eons. I felt civilizations dying a second time, their final memories cascading through the void, felt the convergence fragmenting, its ancient intelligence shattering into a million incomprehensible pieces, and I felt myself burning too. The UV radiation was cooking my body from the outside in, breaking down the darkness that had integrated with my cells. It should have been agony. Instead, I felt myself becoming separate again, individual, me. For just a moment before the end, I was Nathan Wright again, completely alone inside my own head. It was the most beautiful feeling I'd ever experienced. The last thing I heard before the darkness finally, mercifully released me was Gaza's voice through the radio. I've got you. I've got you. Just hold on. I wanted to tell him I couldn't hold on, that I was already gone, that he should save himself, save the others, let me burn with the thing that tried to steal my humanity. But my mouth wouldn't work anymore, so I just thought it as hard as I could, hoping somehow he'd hear me across the void. Thank you for making me want to stay. Then there was light, brilliant and pure and absolute, and the darkness burned away to nothing. I burned with it. The rescue ship arrived on day 9, 2 days before sunset, 2 days before our life support would have failed completely. We'd been running on emergency reserves since the UV flood, rationing oxygen, eating cold rations in the dark because we'd burned through every power cell in the base, killing that thing. 7 of us made it. Tommy Briggs didn't. He'd volunteered to manually override the UV emitters when the automated system failed, and the radiation exposure killed him in 40 minutes. Katsaros held his hand while he died, whispering reassurances that probably didn't help but were all we had to offer. They quarantined us for 6 months when we got back to Earth. Blood tests, tissue samples, psychiatric evaluations. The government wanted to make sure we weren't carrying any contamination, any fragment of the convergence that might spread. We all tested clean. The UV radiation had been thorough. I'm writing this from my apartment in Houston, looking at a photograph on my desk. It's me and Nathan on our second day at Lunar Colony 1, standing in the rec room with stupid grins on our faces. Someone, probably Holloway, had taken it without us noticing. We looked so damn young, so hopeful. NASA classified the entire mission. Officially, Lunar Colony 1 suffered a catastrophic life support failure. 7 crew members survived, 5 died in the accident. There's a memorial at Johnson Space Center with their names on it. I visit sometimes, usually at night when no one else is around, and I tell Nathan things I should have said when he was alive. The cylinders are still up there. We destroyed maybe 300 of them, but Garza's estimates suggested thousands more deeper in the crater. NASA sealed Shackleton with demolition charges and declared it off-limits indefinitely, but I know they're planning another mission. They always do. The potential for biological immortality is too tempting to ignore. I quit NASA 3 weeks after we came back. Couldn't stomach the lies, the cover-up, the way they talked about Nathan's sacrifice like it was an acceptable loss. Tommy, Nathan's brother, called me after he saw the news. We met for drinks, and I told him everything. He cried. So did I. He talked about you constantly, I told him. Said you were the only family that mattered. Said he was sorry for wasting so much time running. Tommy just nodded, staring into his beer. He was always running. Even when we were kids. Guess he finally found something worth stopping for. Yeah, I agreed, he did. I still have Nathan's flask, the bourbon one he smuggled onto the base. I found it in his quarters when we were packing up. Sometimes I pour myself a drink and imagine he's sitting across from me, making some sarcastic comment about my taste in music or telling me about his latest communication array design. The nightmares have gotten better. I don't wake up screaming anymore, don't see Bridges' transformed face pressed against the porthole. But I still can't look at shadows without remembering how they moved, how they consumed everything they touched. Last week, I got a package, no return address. Inside was a data drive containing encrypted files from the Lunar Colony 1 server, logs that shouldn't exist, recordings that were supposed to be destroyed. I haven't opened them yet. Part of me doesn't want to know what else NASA might be hiding. But there's one file labeled with my name, just my name. And the timestamp says it was created 3 days after Nathan died. I'm staring at it now, cursor hovering over the icon, trying to decide if some mysteries are better left buried in the dark where they belong. My hand is shaking as I click to open it.